Okay, the title is a little bit complicated. I would give you a sort of brainstorming. An important point is that something that really impressed me, that basically a lot of presentation start with a sort of 10, 15 minutes of assumption, definition, axiom, theorems. They are expelling the semantic from the analysis. And then another 10 minutes of calculation things, no? And then, so I changed my presentation a little bit. And I will present only semantic things. It will not having any formal things, okay? And it's about different points. Okay, so first of all, we are talking with things that have an identity. That is where code enter into play, where thermodynamic enter into play. And identity means, you know, from Latin, idem and idem, no? Idem and idem. And it's about two things, expected and established, and must be experienced in order to have semiosis. So living systems are not only tangible, they are not only notional. Either we agree on this, and every time we do a question, we have to be aware that they are alive, and second, that codes are what allows the dancing across the epistemic cuts. Let's give an example of identity. So this is a dog on the golden beach of Istanbul. And then, of course, in order to recognize this as a dog, you must have a sort of notional check of ontology of things. And then this is the guy that say, oh, an identity. This is the dog. This is what I expect is a dog. And the dog would be the symbolic code that we use to share the meaning about dogs. But if the guy would be in French, he would call it chien, or cane in Italy, or perro in Spain, or whatever. So symbolic code have names. There are different names in different places. If this is true, this cannot be a dog on the golden beach of Istanbul, because people in other countries never saw this dog, okay? So what is the external referent of this symbol? What happened? You must have an equivalent class of instance. They are based on a common template, a formal cause. Then basically this is no longer a dog, is an instance of an organism belonging to the species Canis familiaris, okay? So we have a fantastic situation in which in this you have non-tangible, notional, no, there is a tangible part in the brain of the person that does the decoding, and other notional things. That is possible because of the existence of a tangible process of reproduction of instance. So again, all of this work because there is a continuous movement between tangible and non tangible. So you have expected, experience established. Then for the linguistic, this is very interesting because the symbolic language are parasites of the existence of external reference. So the language has two parts. One part, like in the DNA, will be decoding, be mapping external reference, and another, the grammar, how to handle this information. Okay, however, let's go on. Now let's go into the concept of functional cycle, the back fuga. How we get a back fuga replicated in time. So you have an encoding step, and then you have a code. There's no is white in, and then this would be a symbolic code that is encoding the fuga. And then you may have a mechanical encoding system that is not symbolic, okay? So when you go to the decoding, you have a pianist or a Dutch mechanical organ that is playing the fuga, okay? After the decoding, you get something tangible, the melody, and then you must have someone decoding at the end that say, oh, this is the fuga of Bach. And this will be the, Tarski, snow is white, snow is white. This is, okay. So what happened here, why this is a functional code? Because in order to have someone that is encoding, decoding, you must have someone that pay for it, okay? If you don't have someone pay for it, this will not be replicated. Okay, let's see the difference if this is done by human or with symbolic code. Basically, you have a coder that is communicating with the pianist. Pianist, no? Okay. And then the pianist is making an instance, and in this way is communicating with the audience that is recognized this as the fuga. And of course, you have a communication with the final cause to communicate how to do it. And then the pianist has another final cause, making people of the audience happy. And what happened? All this can go on if at a certain point these people pay for it, okay? Because it seems, but if you have a code, the code has a cost for operation, someone has to pay for it. In this case, it's money. In the other case, is electricity for the internet, is ATP for the operation of the cells, whatever, but someone has to pay. Okay, let's go on. What happens if we do it with the mechanical part? There is no communication, symbolic communication between two humans. You have the machine that traduces and makes the music. Then, what happens here? If the people gathering by chance in the street, so there is no longer all the machinery of the theater, is giving money, then you have something that is capable of stabilizing the process of encoding and decoding. And basically, there is no communication one-to-one by the different agents, but it's simply, if this thing is stabilized, this means that the type of tape is generating a melody that people want to pay for. The Dutch organ is capable of decoding the tape. The Dutch organ is capable of playing the melody. And this generating a functional cycle in the sense these different assumptions are true. But then you don't need a final code, meaning one-to-one, is the package of the thing. The thing works, and if it is work, means something, that it can be stabilized. Okay. Making of the tape, making of the organ, operation of the organ, people liking the fuga. Well, this could be whatever else. I mean, this is a metaphor, okay? Okay, so what I will go through this now is, and this is something that I got from Marcello, that you don't have information, you have tangible realization of information carriers, and this tangible information of information carrier have to be used to communicate in a meaningful way, to do something. And then, so information, here I was discussing with Omar, is very ambiguous. We should rather talk with meaningful communication, that automatically is to do what, that is important. And then a meaningful communication is about coding and decoding tangible information carrier to share situated meaning, whose usefulness depends on the existence of a special relation between coder and decoder. What is situated meaning is that these things, is like we saw before, must be capable of decode the tape, do the melody should be useful, and not necessarily each one of these must have a meaning and a person that says true or not true. You have this process, if the process works, it's okay. It's a learning by doing. Second step, non-equilibrium thermodynamics. Talking about books, important. What is Life is is the most famous book of this person. They start saying, no, living systems are impossible according to thermodynamic, classic thermodynamic. Probably is wrong, the thermodynamic, because they are alive and they are non-in equilibrium. Okay. So what are the implications? I'll give you 3 examples. That you have types and equivalent class versus instances, and this is due to non-equilibrium thermodynamic. You have the fact that these things must become in time. You cannot have a dissipative structure that's forever. A tornado, a flame, after a while die. So you must have something more, and this is where the code enter into play. The code make possible for dissipative system to become. And then the dissipative system are about being able to have a structural coupling with your environment. Example. This is a tornado, a type of tornado, and this is an instance of tornado. What is the difference? This can go clockward or anti-clockward. This is an instance, depending on how it started, it rotates in one side or another. No? But these things are pretty much stupid in the sense that that's it. You have one bit of information, byte of information. Then, this is a flame, and this is a bacteria. What is the difference here? That this flame is perfectly defined by physical laws. These bacteria, no, they obey to physical laws, but are generated by the semiotic controls. This is where code enters into play. But it is important that the generation of things out of equilibrium is not because of code. The code are capable of take advantage of the opening given by what you can do within physical law to organize, to become something else, whatever you want. But the original drive for doing things is this one. We have the water cycle, the Minho, the streams in the ocean. I mean, we have so many things that are self-organizing without code. So it is not that the code that make possible to have a situation of non-equilibrium, but it's the second law of thermodynamics that is generating this drive toward something else. Okay. Why these have to become? Because otherwise they will run out of the gradients that this end up. So the semiotic control is a cybernetic control plus meaningful communication based on code. Okay? Okay, so how it is, okay, no, this is another structural coupling. What you mean with structural coupling is that if you have code that define what is the pattern of entropy production, this must be operating in an admissible environment. This is the basic of the concept of Umwelt. If you are a rabbit, you need to have grass to eat. If you are a fox, you must have rabbit to eat. This is a code because it could be whatever. It really depends. Who is this? Define what is that. Okay? And this structural coupling is forced, no matter what. Whatever is alive must have this structural coupling. Okay. Encoding how to produce, yes, entails heavy assumption about the nature. We saw the example of the fuga of Bach, no? If you are making the tape, the thing, you are assuming someone will pay. Otherwise, you will not get it. Okay. Okay. What the code have to do with the structural type? Let's imagine that you have this situation in which this is the converter generating entropy inside, and this is the admissible environment, okay? If these things, and then you may have the same things, a car consuming gasoline, okay? If these things, and please, we are using code that they are not related to the genetic code, you know, because there are other codes around, not only the genetic code. If you have semiotic control, then I can know how much these things is metabolizing per kilo. I can know how much energy is per kilo here, and how much hay is generated here. And the same way, I can know how much miles I can do with the car starting from available tons of oil. So what happened is the existence of code make possible for functional cycles to define what is the structural coupling and go from internal activities to external activity. This is a code, no? You are kilos of horses mapping onto hectare of pasture, no? Okay. Now we go to magic autocatalysis. Then this is what I was telling yesterday to Marcelo. Marcelo will be probably not happy, but I mean, to me, this is the mother of code poiesis. And what happened? Jesus. Okay, so this is a metabolic repair network. This is what something proposed by Rosen. You have different nodes. This node can self-replicate. and they are in a group autocatalysis. Each of these make the other, okay? If you have this situation, so you have an admissible environment for the whole and an admissible part for each of the parts, okay? What happened here, that if I take out one node, I take out the things there, the image of this node is still there because it's the mutual information of all the other interacting with this. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Sudoku? You know the Sudoku game? No, okay. The Sudoku game is exactly. This is called mutual information. There would be downward causation, how the network is defining the identity of the part. And then, of course, oops, Jesus. Okay, so the mutual information would be what is that the network is expecting or giving to the specific node. And then the direct information will be the genetic information about this. Was about salmon. So this is what the salmon do with their context, and this is how to make salmon. They are two different things. This is upward causation, and this is downward causation. Okay. But if we accept that you may have a metabolic repair network that is different parts together expressing a whole, basically then we have the phenomenon of group autocatalysis. There are two important points here. One, that this system can become something else while remaining the same. That is, for instance, you can take B and put D, then you can take out C and put D to its place. Then you can keep going. To a certain point, you get a totally different set of structural type, but the functional type is the same. Okay, so they all remain the same, and the parts are different. Okay, so this is important to explain the fact that you can still define new structural coupling inside, but the same structural coupling outside. But then we come to the, in my view, the code poiesis things. Okay, let's imagine that A, B, C, and D together express an emergent property that alone they don't. So basically this means that they became a whole and they became part. Okay. If we had an information carrier capable of reproducing each of these three, when the three are together, this information carrier becomes code for the making of the whole. Is clear this, or because you are giving this B is no longer B, it's a functional part of the whole. So when I make a code for making B, I'm making a part of the whole. I'm no longer making B. No, this is called the emergent property, basically. No? As soon as you establish a part-whole relation, the information carrier used to make the parts become codes for the making of the whole. Okay? So the emergent property is exactly this, giving meaning. And this is why nobody can deal with it, because introducing a new level of analysis, the functional whole can be described on a different descriptive domain than the structural parts. And this is the next part, the holon. How many of you are aware of the term holon or the concept holon? Okay. Okay, Arthur Kessler, this is a very nice book, please. This is The Ghost in the Machine. There will be the meaning of an assembling of parts. Is Arthur here. And then there is a huge epistemological challenge to dealing with the holon. And this exactly has to do with the epistemic cut that we discussed at the beginning. And then this implies that there is also a holonic code that is how the relation between the definition of the part and the definition of the whole. This definition is given at a higher level of analysis, whereas the definition of how to make the part is given at the lower level of analysis. So you have a metabolic code is the structural coupling, and this is the functional coupling that is vertical. The structural coupling is horizontal, this is vertical. Okay. Okay. So basically you have functional coupling, that is the epistemic cut. You know, functional relation, organized structure, types, individuals, social roles, incumbent. This is going through different type of science, including philosophy. And an example is this one. You have the President of the United States. There are different incumbents. They keep coming. And at the same time, you have the definition of presidency in the Constitution of the United States. So, but when we say the President of the United States, what you are referring to? Because this is the issue, no? The functional type, the structural type, the Constitution, Trump versus Biden, the US president in general, okay? So it is very important, and it's coming to code, what you are coding here. A code means that you are capable of coding the functional type, the structural type, and generate instance. They are good at keeping the whole story together. So why this is important? Because you may have the same instance have different structural type, or the same functional type has different instance. So this is irreducible. And there is also a time part. No? You get a BMW car that is, when it became an instance, has a problem of time. If it's second-hand vehicles, it depends whether they had an accident or not. So one thing if it is a type, one thing is the special instance of car, okay? Oh. And then basically this has to do with direct information, modal information, structural coupling, and holonic coupling. Okay, so what is the problem here? You may have the same Y function and a lot of structural types. Coming to biochemistry thing, this obviously will be a mess because, of course, the same things can be, the same function can be carried out by different structural type. In the same way, the same structural type can do different functions depending on what you want to do. And even more, you may have emergent. In the sense you need to do something, so you use something that you have, and you start doing this with that. That makes very difficult to have a one-to-one mapping if you are just looking at the structural part. You have to look at the structural functional part at the same time, and whether or not this is useful for the functional cycles. Okay. Okay. This is another on life, Rosen. And then you can look this using relational analysis. You have material formal cause. They do a structural type. Then the structural type can express functions, but we don't know if this function is useful or not. So this is what we call a propensity. Let's imagine that at a certain point, so basically you have contingent definition of potential component of a holon. Then what happened at a certain point, because of the combination with higher level things, these things become useful to establishing a functional cycle. Then at this point, this function is the expression of the final cause for the upper level, downward causation. Then basically you start having the holarchy is a whole that has a meaningful part. Then basically what happened is this is established, and this is expected, and this is a code. The formal definition of these things is what makes possible to express a function that is according to the final cause of the whole. And therefore, if I reproduce these formal things, is coding for how to do the cycle. Okay? Now, finished. How many minutes I have? 2, 3 minutes, no? Okay, yeah? See? Okay, so here I have a question for you guys, sorry. After 3 days, ecology is part of biology or not? Because in 3 days I never had mention of ecology here, no? In ecology there are population, species, different type of ecosystem, code, an enormous amount of code. We move from genetic to cultural. There is nothing in the middle. I believe that especially if we want to go for a new biology, we should try to go a little bit higher than just the genome, because there are a lot of other things in the middle. Okay, so this is, to the best of my knowledge, the best attempt to use complexity to explain evolution, the adaptive cycle by Holling, and it's like, I don't know, if you are not expert of, I don't know, in ecology, the species start, when they have a favorable gradient, they expand as much as they can. The R phase, so a few species with a lot of individuals each, a lot of redundancy. Then when there is a lot of animals there, they eat redundancy. You have a lot of species with very few instances of each one. Then depending on how stable is the environment, at the level of the individuals, you can either continue going or you will start dying and doing mutation to change the cycle. So this is the... So what I did is I rotate the 4 quadrants. To have this type of symmetry, we may have notional on the top and the tangible on the bottom, large scale on the right, and local scale on the left. And at this point, you have, on the top you have types, on the bottom you have instances, and it's the same things. No? When you have reorganization, you have the instance start growing, and then they are doing an ecosystem that is based on a lot of individuals for each species. They go down, then become a lot of species with few individuals. Then if the things go wrong, they have to change the way it goes, no? And that's it. This is perfectly consistent with the biosemiotic things that you apply, represent. So what happened with the creation of code in this cycle? This one, okay, basically. You have, at the moment, the ecosystem, okay? This is a bunch of validated information. So these are expected relation of a part, and basically mutual information about how does it work. Okay. This validated information at a large scale then is moved to the local scale and applied in specific places, okay? So basically, the pool genes send probes out, they drop in different places and see what happens, if they come back, okay? Because this is a fantastic insight of a famous ecologist, Margalev, that says in the functional cycle, ecosystems send message to themselves in the future. So they send a message and they see what comes back, no? Okay. So they send back these things, then basically, if you extract a functional cycle, you manage to have holons, and then different holons together, they make ecosystem, and the ecosystem go back, validate the information. What is the point? That the information here is no longer the information that went out from here, because the ecosystem learned how to readjust, okay? So in this way, you have that the frequency probability of genes or genome into in the gene pool are transformed in the genetic code, genotype, and niche at the local scale that are transformed in habitat and phenotype in the metabolic code at the local scale, that one part of this is eliminated, one part is changed, and then at this point you get how to rearrange this into something that is functional. Like for instance, here you have herbivores. You may have elephant, rabbit, whatever. Here you have herbivores and carnivores and things. They are totally different logic to how to define functional element here and element here. So a rabbit and an elephant are herbivores. You know? You may have that a spider and a tiger is a carnivore. I mean, so really is a different logic. But then in this way, you go back. At this point, this message coming back is different from the message that goes out. What happened here? You are changing the frequencies assigned to possibility. This is the definition of information. So the system is learning how to reorganize its information by changing all the codes that are in the middle. So what happens if you look at these type of things? You have the functional cycles produce, preserve, and adapt an increasing states of code across different levels, or we can say differently, the production, preservation, and adaptation of codes across different levels of organization allow the existence of functional cycles. And this is Max Barcello much happy. But I mean, in my view, if we want to keep the fact that all these equations that we are writing there are referring to real life and to the way life is evolving on this planet, we have to start discussing about the fact that this code must be useful for doing something and track the different codes at different levels. And there are a lot of levels. I mean, there is life beyond genomes. Let's put it this way, because, I mean, no? Okay, it's over.
Thank you, Mario. I don't know if we have any questions, but I have one for you, because I can see how we all, I think, could see that you were very influenced by Arthur Crowther, but you try to put other possibilities. But I see some similarities between Arthur thinking and Jung thinking about holons and archetypes.
Yeah.
But archetypes, or the way that Jung view archetypes, they try to never split between mind and body. Otherwise, Arthur Crowther seems a little bit Cartesian.
No, the holon by definition is a holon. It's a combination of part and mind and body.
Okay.
This is exactly a holon.
It was what I was trying to ask you. Could you explain a little more about the holons?
The holon is exactly the terms is from holistic and on like particle, proton. So it's put together holon. They say this is at the same time a part and a whole. Why this is important? I didn't have time. Guys, in 25 minutes. Because what happened for the holon move meaning and the definition of the structural coupling across level. Let's imagine you have a cell that is working with ATP. Then you go to the tissue or and it's go with glucose. Then you go to the organ and you get carbohydrates. You go to the horse, this get hay. And you go, and at each time, the higher level holon is providing meaningful context to the lower level holon. So what happened when you have this holarchic organization is like the story of the mechanical organ. If the horse is alive, all the other coding with all the other definition of what is structural coupling or not, what is the admissible environment, so the holon preserve the umwelt of the lower. So in my view, this is really, really important, because then you can use it also for the organization of societies. He works on how the society works. Of course, you have healthcare, then you go there to the lower, and each level filter. Some things is done at the lower level. If when you don't know, you go to the higher level. If you don't know, you go to the higher level. And then this system can filter the definition of function. So you are doing function, simple function, lower, and more complicated, higher. But the hierarchical organization makes possible to always have relatively simple things, because all the other problems have been solved by the other and by the one on the top of you. So no, I mean, in my view, he's a genius. He was a bizarre person, but he was...
Okay, thank you, Gianpietro. Do you have a question, Ricardo?
I'd like to say that I enjoyed very much the way you organize these 4 quadrants.
Yeah.
Can I continue?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. The way you organize these 4 quadrants for studying your ecological systems. In system theory, it is not always possible to decompose the system into parts in such a way that each of those parts preserves holonic properties. I am trying to figure out how your 4 quadrants apply to biological systems must be interpreted. So my question is, when you go to the 3rd quadrant, the 3rd one, back in those. where you write the Olonic code. I think you called it Olonic code.
This one. That Marcello doesn't want to see.
Yeah. It's behind Marcello's picture.
Okay.
Yeah. So my question is, what you call Olonic? You have a tag there. Okay, Olonic code in biological systems is only applicable at cellular level for pluripotential stem cells. Those are those cells have Olonic properties. For instance, in mathematics domains, Olonic properties are common applicable to fractals. In biological systems, we could consider Olonic codes are pluripotential stem cells. When you are in other contexts, how do you use this Olonic property?
I will scandalize you. I work on the interface of metabolic system of societies and metabolic system of ecosystem. Okay? So you start in a society, what does it do? Express different social practices. The different social practices are final cause. You want to reproduce the household, you want to reproduce the agricultural sector. Each of these produce food things that are useful for the society. So you start saying what are the final cause, what are the efficient cause, what are the formal cause. As soon as you have a formal and efficient, for instance, producing food, okay, what type of food you are producing, a list. How you produce this food? Energy. Then when you get to this point, you can define the formal cause. How you produce electricity with base load, peaker, or intermittent, wind, nuclear, and things. Then you have the functional element producing electricity. In reality, is a combination of lower structural elements. You know. So you said if you want to have a statistical things, the input, output, whatever, or production of electricity, the functional element, I have to look to the input, output of the different structural elements. And the same for producing food, for producing whatever. If you start with what is the function within the big part, then you say how this function is expressed. Then you have the Olonic code in the sense you must have an organization of lower level structural element. They are capable of expressing the function which is required by the higher level. I don't know if this is...
Okay, thank you.
So then it is very, very useful relational analysis of Rosen. You start what the system does, reproduces itself, how does it do it? By expressing this function. What type of functional element are used to express this function? Then, within the functional element, which type of structural element are used? This is the Olonic code. You say, whoever is producing rice, corn, wheat, things, these are structural element of the Olon producing cereals. No? Then you can keep doing whatever you want because you are disaggregating your system on functional basis.
Okay. Mario, thank you for your presentation.